Section 1. Significance of Bitcoin today. Summary. Numerous examples can be found where currency collapse has caused immediate and demonstrable harm to citizens. We profile the recent examples of Argentina, Lebanon, Turkey, Cuba, and Nigeria. So far in history, 56 hyperinflation events have taken place. All but one took place in the 20th or 21st century, and none occurred in an economy with a currency based on a commodity standard. The savings of people who did not exchange the currency for hard assets were destroyed. Currency crises disproportionately affect the middle and lower classes, who do not own real assets and do not have the means to be sufficiently nimble and move assets abroad. Bitcoin can benefit citizens by forcing central banks that might have been overly inflationary to adopt monetary discipline. Bitcoin offers savers a means to store their wealth in a medium that is independent of central banks. Over 100 million individuals worldwide have adopted it over its short lifetime. High per capita adoption of Bitcoin is evident in countries with elevated inflation, onerous capital controls, a weak respect for property rights, and poor governance. This demonstrates that individuals in these countries value Bitcoin's institutional qualities, which compare favorably with their local settings. Bitcoin's energy costs must be considered in the context of its merits. Numerous energy-consuming technologies, for example, heating, air conditioning, washing machines, and tumble dryers, have been embraced because they improve quality of life. The human cost of monetary instability. Argentina, December 2001. On December 1, 2001, all bank accounts in Argentina were frozen. The Argentine peso depreciated 40% overnight against the US dollar and lost 75% of its value over the following 3 years. Most of the savers who watched as the value of their frozen savings declined were smaller depositors. Those with means had offshored their funds to safer jurisdictions in the time leading up to the overnight devaluation. The savings of the middle and lower classes were virtually destroyed. With money frozen, commerce collapsed, and unemployment spiked, peaking at 22.5%. Riots resulted in 24 deaths in December alone. 7 million middle-class people were cast into poverty because of what became known as the corralito, literally, playpen, and its aftermath. This meant that 18% of the population became nuevos pobres, newly poor. Devaluations generally occur suddenly, invariably violate property rights, and inflict maximum pain on the least economically mobile. The banking system, out of which deposits become cumbersome or impossible to extract, is generally the primary means of expropriation. Argentina's corralito tragically followed the devaluation textbook. With this and other memories of sharp devaluations looming large in living memory, Argentina has one of the world's highest per capita rates of cryptocurrency adoption. The Argentine crypto brokerage Ripio boasts 1.3 million users, attracted by sound, non-state money such as Bitcoin. Turkey, May 2018. On May 23, 2018, the Turkish lira fell 5% against the US dollar. The catalyst: President Erdogan's announcement that he would override the views of the central bank and take control of interest rates directly. The lira depreciated by 25% over the year, and it has fallen 77% against the dollar since 2013. Official inflation has run well above 10% for the last 3 years, disproportionately hurting low-income households that lack previously owned hard assets to barter and sell. Inflation has spiked, and growth has plummeted. Given the cultural affinity for gold in Turkey, it's no surprise that Bitcoin has played a significant role as the currency has weakened. Turkey boasts the world's 8th highest per capita cryptocurrency penetration, with an estimated 5 million crypto investors. Local exchanges BTC Turk and Paribu count 3 million users apiece. Turkey's 84 million inhabitants have been forced to reckon with a currency crisis exacerbated by the direct imposition of President Erdogan's views on monetary policy, combined with a weak non-independent central bank that has a revolving door of governors. The current crisis, caused by unsustainable government borrowing and spending, combined with a lack of monetary credibility, has wreaked havoc on the population. Lebanon, October 2019. In October 2019, Lebanese banks imposed arbitrary withdrawal limits, trapping user savings in a system that could not meet its outstanding liabilities. ATMs ceased dispensing cash. Since fall 2019, the Lebanese pound has depreciated 91% against the US dollar. Even though the pound remains nominally pegged at $1,500 to $1, the street rate is $17,000 to $1. Amidst the chaos, large depositors have extricated themselves from the banking system, smuggling $6 billion out of the country, 10 in direct circumvention of capital controls. The meager life savings of smaller depositors have been frozen. The consequences of the financial crisis and currency collapse have been dire. The once vibrant middle class has been obliterated. Ordinary citizens, unable to access functional financial services, have resorted to bartering goods. Over half of the population has been driven into poverty. The World Bank has labeled the episode among the world's 10 worst financial crises since the mid-19th century. Over 3/4 of families cannot eat adequately, and 2/3 of the population now buys food on credit. As with the Argentine corralito, when a fragile fiat currency breaks, elites often have the means to escape, while small and medium-sized depositors are punished financially and suffer an accelerating decline in living conditions. Faced with a dysfunctional financial system, some entrepreneurial Lebanese have begun to utilize Bitcoin as a bridge currency for remittance purposes. Cuba, January 2021. Since 1993, Cubans have been forced to juggle competing currencies in a Byzantine system of multiple exchange rates. While both the peso and the convertible peso are officially pegged to $1, the peso trades at around 4 cents to the dollar. Government workers receive their salaries in pesos, making it the more commonly used currency. Convertible pesos are reserved for tourists and imports. The association of the CUC with the luxury or tourist sector means that many Cubans have left their peso-remunerated jobs for jobs in tourism or as taxi drivers that give them access to scarcer, more reliable CUCs. Juggling multiple currencies causes friction and constant confusion, and access to these distinct currencies drives inequality in Cuban society. The COVID-19 pandemic reduced tourism, significantly hurting the Cuban economy and kicking off an economic crisis. In addition, the government unified the coexisting currency systems on January 1, 2021, sparking a shock devaluation and triple-digit inflation. As with all sharp changes of direction in monetary policy, the effects have been disparate. Cubans who save in domestic pesos and do not work for the government suffered especially from the devaluation, while state workers received an automatic pay rise to offset the inflation. The devaluation combined with a shortage of dollars to intensify an economic crisis. Inflation will be at least 500% this year, and Cubans have been forced to acquire currency on the black market in order to obtain everyday food and commodities. The crisis sparked the most intense protests against the Cuban regime since the revolution in 1959. The economic misery is so pronounced that Cubans are risking arrest by the secret police by engaging in the nation's first-ever mass protests. Nigeria is Africa's most populous country with 211 million inhabitants, as well as a growing economic powerhouse likely to play a significant role in the continent's future. Yet its people have been saddled with an unreliable monetary system. Inflation reached 18% in March 2021, with food prices especially unstable. Material inflation is commonplace for Nigerians. Since 2008, it has averaged 12.2%. The monetary woes worsened this year with the abrupt devaluation of the naira, which resulted from a bid to harmonize the country's two parallel currencies. Naira-denominated savings ebbed away, and Nigeria also fell into a painful recession. However, savers find it hard to exit the naira for other, sounder, currencies because of rigid currency controls. That makes it no surprise that Nigeria has a very high rate of Bitcoin adoption, the highest in the world, according to Statista. In a recent survey, 32% of respondents claim to use cryptocurrency. Even government action to cut off exchanges from the banking sector failed to stem enthusiasm for Bitcoin. Users simply migrated to peer-to-peer exchanges, like Paxful, where Nigeria ranks second globally behind the U.S. Chainalysis estimates that $2.4 billion worth of cryptocurrency flowed into Nigerian hands in May 2021 alone. Uses for Bitcoin in Nigeria are extremely diverse. Political activist groups, excluded from the formal banking sector, have used Bitcoin to accept donations and mobilize in a way that avoids censors. Some Nigerians are also using Bitcoin as an alternative savings device. Others are using Bitcoins as a bridge currency to import U.S. dollars. Bitcoin is also a medium of exchange for exporters hampered by currency controls. In short, Bitcoin is unlocking the creativity and economic potential of a growing and ambitious population, offering them an alternative to an exclusionary and unstable financial system. These recent examples are, tragically, only a small sample of the world's monetary collapses and their effects on people, particularly the middle and working classes. The history of fiat currency is rife with such examples. Most notorious are cases in which the value of a currency falls to effectively zero, and savings are completely destroyed. In Venezuela and Zimbabwe, the sovereign currency was entirely obliterated. All told, 56 distinct hyperinflation events can be identified in history. All except one took place in the 20th or 21st centuries. The causes have differed and include war, political chaos, and sudden changes in economic regimes. But there is one constant. Each occurred in an economy with a discretionary, fiat monetary standard. No hyperinflation event has ever occurred in an economy where monetary policy was constrained by a commodity standard. The destruction of a nation's savings through uncontrolled hyperinflation is a modern phenomenon. Of course, hyperinflation is not the only form of monetary collapse. Monetary policy, if misused, can be a powerful tool for confiscation, effectively enabling an unconsented redistribution of societal resources. All too often, monetary reforms take citizens by surprise and strip them of their purchasing power. Because citizens tend to save either directly or indirectly through instruments tied to government debt and the currency, sharp changes in monetary direction often come at the expense of savers. Inflation, defaults, and monetary chaos tend to hollow out society. Historical accounts of currency instability and the subsequent destruction of savings are often dry and mired in jargon, and they overlook the enormous human cost of monetary failures. Worse, the frequency of financial crises has dramatically increased since the Bretton Woods system ended. Between 1975 to 2009, historians have noted 224 distinct currency crises, a rate of over 6 per year. Ironically, the increasing frequency and intensity of monetary instability is occurring amidst increasing confidence on the part of modern central bankers. In 2017, then, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen said she did not believe there would be another financial crisis in our lifetimes. Developed central banks today facilitate state largesse by monetizing debt, and some developed central banks now directly support government expenditure with monetary issuance. As quantitative easing has become commonplace, central banks are reinterpreting their mandates and expanding their scope. Despite the expanded role for central banks, financial crises are not obsolete. Sovereign defaults in 2020 were the highest in more than 20 years, while the ratio of sovereign credit downgrades to upgrades was an all-time high of 10-to-1. However, access to the most credible sovereign currencies is highly contingent on a person's place of birth. Today, 1.3 billion individuals worldwide live under double- or triple-digit inflation. 1.2 The relevance of Bitcoin to society today. Today, Bitcoin is a globally relevant monetary institution which provides a non-state, non-bank means of wealth storage, as well as an apolitical, neutral transactional medium. While many people use intermediaries and custodians to store their Bitcoin, in the same manner that many individuals find it convenient to own gold in a paper format, they can also own the asset directly, on a laptop or smartphone. The aggregate value of all the outstanding units of Bitcoin stands at around $700 billion. Aside from being a means to transport wealth through time and space via a system with predictable rules and sound assurances based on cryptography, Bitcoin also facilitates the final settlement of value with no counterparty risk. Bitcoin settles billions of dollars worth of transactions every day without meaningful interruption or downtime, granting users predictable, strong finality within a few blocks. In April 2021, an estimated $15 billion worth of Bitcoin transfers were settled every day. In its first 12.5 years of existence, Bitcoin settled hundreds of individual billion-plus dollar transactions without incident. Thanks to its history of largely faultless, continuous operation, Bitcoin is widely considered a sound and credible global settlement system. These settlement assurances are granted by the proof of work process in a setting with no ultimate coordinator or leader. Alternative systems that appear less costly are based on centralized models with a handful of ultimate arbiters who determine the valid transactional history. It is because Bitcoin strives to establish a neutral, apolitical, and unopinionated transactional medium that it must retain an open setting, in which any miner can leave and join at their pleasure. Proof of work permits this. In addition, the proof of work mechanism mediates the issuance of new Bitcoins by effectively auctioning them off in a free market environment with open competition. Bitcoin's free market issuance model ensures that no small, privileged group can emerge with sole access to the monetary spigot. The proof of work issuance method, whereby miners spend electricity and computational resources to acquire new units, establishes a real world cost for Bitcoin, requiring miners to buy in if they want to occupy the position of the mint. This compares with fiat systems in which a handful of privileged entities can create arbitrary numbers of currency units at no cost to themselves. For a nascent technology, only 12 years into its lifetime, Bitcoin has achieved a remarkable level of adoption. The Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance estimated in 2020 the number of cryptocurrency users at between 101 and 191 million worldwide. The cryptocurrency exchange and brokerage Coinbase alone boasts 56 million users in 100 countries. A NYDIG survey found 46 million Bitcoin owners in the U.S. alone. Crypto.com estimates there were 106 million cryptocurrency users in January 2021, of which 71 million owned Bitcoin. While precise estimates are hard to obtain, Bitcoin is today likely relevant to the lives of well over 100 million people worldwide. While a large share of the capital invested in Bitcoin is from American, European, or Chinese investors, the per capita penetration figures tell a story of global adoption. Based on an index quantifying grassroots adoption compiled from on-chain flow, survey data, and measurable peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange transactions, it is evident that Bitcoin's greatest per capita penetration is in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. The 20 most crypto-active states, measured by usage per unit of population, are listed in Table 1. The US and China make the list, but it is otherwise largely dominated by emerging, frontier, and politically unstable markets. Some countries where citizens actively pursue crypto activities are in the midst of inflationary episodes, such as Venezuela, Argentina, and Nigeria. Others, like China and Ukraine, encumber citizens' assets with robust capital controls. Most tellingly, it appears that users are attracted to Bitcoin at least partly due to the failure of local institutions. The top 10 states on the Crypto Adoption Index on average score below the global average on measures of democracy and government integrity. Bitcoin's disproportionate adoption in states with weak currencies or inferior protections for private property stands to reason. It consists of an independent system of property rights that upholds the transactional freedom of individuals and permits savers worldwide to control their wealth directly, through a simple cryptographic key. Bitcoin is a non-sovereign global network available to anyone with internet and a smartphone, and it offers a free monetary choice, granting savers worldwide the ability to opt out of their local regime. Moreover, the presence of freely available currency substitutes exerts a disciplinary force on central banks, punishing loose monetary policy. Thus, Bitcoin does not have to be fully adopted to improve the livelihoods of individuals living under erratic monetary regimes. The mere threat of currency substitution can encourage better behavior on the part of monetary authorities. Thus, Bitcoin has contextual relevance. It may not seem as compelling to some individuals who believe they live in stable monetary and financial settings, or under a government that respects property rights and the rule of law, but it becomes starkly relevant in their absence. 1.3 Energy consumption and civilizational progress. As we investigate later in this report, Bitcoin requires a considerable amount of energy. Before examining the likely trajectory of these emissions, we can consider humanity's relationship with energy. The story of civilization has been one of capturing and exploiting ever denser sources of energy. The greatest tools for reducing poverty and improving the quality of life have been the development of industrial processes, electrification, industrialized agriculture, air conditioning and heating, and mechanized transport. For example, since Deng Xiaoping's reforms in China in the 1980s, 850 million Chinese have been pulled out of poverty through industrialization and urbanization, all of which required the use of abundant energy. The world is not yet fully electrified, and a modern, developed standard of living is far from ubiquitous. Indeed, 760 million people today live without access to reliable electricity. Only 1/3 of all households worldwide have access to air conditioning, and just 8% of the 2.8 billion people living in the hottest climates. Over the long term, primary energy consumption is closely correlated with GDP. Across sectional analysis of GDP and energy consumption per capita reveals that the wealthiest countries consume, by far, the most energy. There is simply no way to achieve a high standard of living without producing and consuming abundant energy. Equipping citizens with abundant energy is essential to attaining a high standard of living. Indeed, because abundant energy grants us so many luxuries, society rarely engages in public debate about the social merit of these technologies. Air conditioning in hot countries is taken for granted. When blackouts shut off air conditioning, the reaction is to lament the lost convenience rather than accept the pre-industrial default conditions. The social contract that has been sketched out in the West holds that households and industries freely consume energy that they have paid for, while policymakers regulate the grid and mitigate its externalities. Numerous technological innovations consume vast amounts of energy and are generally perceived to be valid uses of that energy given their societal utility. Refrigeration, air conditioning, electric fans, marine and aviation transport all dramatically enhance our quality of life but consume copious amounts of energy in so doing. We mention these industries not to say that their usage should be curtailed, but because they provide evidence for the correlation between energy production and human flourishing. These industries make summers tolerable and winters survivable, make domestic tasks convenient, facilitate a system of global commerce, and make worldwide travel possible. As civilization progresses, we will continue to discover novel means of producing sufficient energy in a sustainable manner. As new forms of energy become more abundant, they will unlock experiences that were hitherto unavailable. Just as gasoline and combustion engines made car travel possible, and efficient batteries enabled personal computation and constant communication, new means of energy production and storage will continue to move civilization forward. Our challenge is to meet society's ever-increasing demand for energy in a manner consistent with any relevant planetary constraints. The alternatives, regressing to a pre-industrial state or barring the Global South from industrializing, are not practical or moral. Like the technologies mentioned above, Bitcoin is a novel innovation that can improve global quality of life. It offers savers the chance to control their wealth directly in a sound, non-state monetary system, bound by non-discretionary rules. As such, Bitcoin offers a uniquely potent system of property rights. Like all breakthrough technologies, the full impact of Bitcoin's merits and capabilities has not been immediately appreciated by its entire addressable market, though it is following a rapid adoption curve. Because Bitcoin offers a unique monetary medium with a clearly established value proposition, it can be situated among other energy-intensive innovations that improve the quality of our lives.